Hello, and welcome to this special virtual event to release the Cleveland to Pittsburgh Corridor Feasibility Study, hosted by Rails to Trails Conservancy. My name is Kelly Pack. I'm the Senior Director of Trail Development, and I'm speaking to you from the center of the Industrial Heartland Trails Network in Pittsburgh. We're excited to share findings from this study and to introduce you to several partners and leaders from Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania who will help advance trail connections along the corridor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Leah Gerber. I'm a trail planner with Rails to Trails Conservancy and one of the authors of the Cleveland to Pittsburgh Feasibility Study. So I want to first thank you all for your flexibility surrounding today and this event, especially in this quickly evolving time we're in now. Even with all the changes, there was such a great response from all of you, and everyone really showed up, which just goes to show how many people are dedicated to this project and why it's so important. I also want to thank everybody involved in the report writing process, all of the trail managers, DNR staff, and trail advocates who provided the information to make this a comprehensive document that really serves as a guide to completing more than 200 miles of trail from Cleveland, Ohio to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have a great lineup of speakers today who all were involved with the process and who will touch upon topics like the economic benefit of this corridor and how it will connect communities across 3 states. So today you'll be hearing from Eric Oberg, Midwest Regional Director with Rails to Trails Conservancy, Andrea Irland, Outdoor Recreation Planner with National Park Service, Kent Spellman, founder of West Virginia Community Development Hub, Tom Demagall, owner of Golden Triangle Bikes in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Joe Sciarretti, Tuscarawas County, Ohio Commissioner. And so with that, I'll turn things over to my colleague, Eric.
Thank you very much, Leah, and I want to thank all of you once again for joining us today and being flexible as we all figure out how to move forward in this challenging time. So thank you for being with us. I'm going to talk about this historic opportunity that we have in front of us. We're looking at 200 plus miles of a potential trail corridor. 75% of this corridor are already down on the ground. You're seeing the new corridor map up on the screen right now. And eventually this corridor will be somewhere between 218 and 228 miles, depending on the final layout. You'll see there's one section that has a couple different options in there. This study really, this document is a testament, and I really want to make this point clear. This study is a testament to 30 plus years of work by people on the ground throughout this corridor, many of whom I know are probably on this call right now. There are too many of you to thank personally and call out in this webinar, but you know who you are, your communities know who you are. 30 plus years of work developing the iconic trails that are already on the ground in this corridor. And this is your legacy. This is a testament to your success and the amazing work that you have done over the last 30 years. And I want to acknowledge that. This wouldn't be possible without that having already been done. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that this is somewhat of an atypical document. The idea of this study is to lay out the vision, to document what's on the ground, to look at our options for filling in the gaps, but it's also a playbook. When you get to the back of this study, you are going to see recommended actions for every single county within this corridor. What is it going to take to move this corridor from an inspirational vision to an intact trail on the ground? That playbook is really laid out piece by piece throughout this document. And I really encourage you, whether you are a community advocate, whether you work for a local work for a public agency, whether you work for a nonprofit, whether you're just an interested citizen who likes to get involved in trail work or trail management and programming. Thumb through this. It will be available at that URL at the bottom of the screen. So please get in there and take a peek. There's a lot of wonderful information. It doesn't just document what's needed to build out the gaps and connect this corridor. It also documents the existing trail on the ground and the long-term needs for management and maintenance of those corridors and of those existing trails, which we all understand in this world is necessary. Building the trail is step one. Maintaining, programming, and managing that trail is probably more important, and that's the long-term goal here. The opportunity in developing this study to bring people together, to bring our public agency partners, to bring our nonprofit and advocacy partners, to bring our elected officials and local leaders together throughout the corridor has been wonderful. And it's that kind of cooperation, the cooperation in putting this document together, but that's the cooperation it's going to take to build this out and then to really leverage it for the community asset and the regional asset that it's eventually going to be. The work in, I'm going to say a few things about the map you see here, but the work in Jefferson and Harrison County and the line with Brooke and Hancock County there at the Ohio River, where the corridor meets West Virginia and goes into Pennsylvania, has been fabulous. From BHJ MPO to the Western Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District and Jefferson County Soil and Water. I mean, some really wonderful partnerships there. And as you can see, this is one of the larger gaps in the corridor, but there's some really high quality work being done to work on that. And it's been exciting to get those folks together and to learn where they are, where they're going, and get their vision down in this document. The collaboration within this entire corridor, I mean, across 3 states, it is monumental. When you look at the entire IHTC corridor, you've got 51 counties and 4 states. It's a big undertaking, and just putting this document together has been a great opportunity to look at it in a little more manageable light, and that's how IHTC has been managed, right? We've got these 8 major corridors across these 51 counties in 4 states. And bringing this corridor working group together and working with them over the last few years, and the culmination of that work being this document has been wonderful. The other overlay that I want to make sure everyone understands, that this 200+ mile corridor from Cleveland to Pittsburgh, 146 miles of that corridor also plays host to the Great American Rail Trail, which is a monumental vision of Rails to Trails Conservancy to create a multi-use trail from Washington, D.C. to Washington State, 3,700 miles across the entire continental United States. It's just another feather in the cap of this part of the country and what we're helping to create. By finishing this corridor, we will also be finishing a large portion of this part of the country's piece of the Great American Rail Trail, and that's significant. We're very excited about the possibilities that this C2P corridor and trail bring, as well as the Great American Rail Trail. We can't wait to continue the work. Obviously, a planning study like this is not the culmination of the work. We are not at the beginning, we're not at the end, and I don't want to do that fancy play on words and say we're at the end of the beginning, but we're well along. We're at a great place to take, to look at what is out there, and again, to look at the legacy that's been left to us by 30 years of visionaries and trail builders. And now it's our turn to keep pushing that legacy and to keep pushing the opportunity forward. And with that, I am going to invite our next speaker, Andrea Irland from the National Park Service.
Thank you, Eric. I'm Andrea Irland. I'm with the National Park Service Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. We provide technical assistance to communities, and I'm located here in Ohio, but I also work in neighboring states like Pennsylvania and a little bit in West Virginia. I'm also part of the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition project support team with Rails to Trails Conservancy and the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. Trails are an important part of the project work that I do in Ohio and surrounding states. And the work that was done by this feasibility study on this major trail corridor of Cleveland to Pittsburgh further demonstrates just how important trails have the potential to be to local users, to local communities, statewide, and beyond. I also serve on the Ohio Trails Advisory Team, which is made up of trail leaders and partner organizations that was created to update the Trails for Ohioans plan. Trail development has changed dramatically since 2005, and the Ohio Trails vision that rolled out in late 2019 includes recommendations for an exciting future ahead for trails. The Ohio Vision specifically calls for priority multi-use trail corridors, including this Cleveland to Pittsburgh corridor and the Great American Rail Trail. Trails have become a priority, a top priority for Mary Mertz, Director of Ohio Department of Natural Resources, as well as Ohio Governor Mike DeWine's administration. The Trails Advisory Team and ODNR are developing strategies and action items to implement the recommendations in the Ohio Trails Vision. This feasibility study will certainly help to make connections and long-distance corridors like this a reality. The Ohio Trails Advisory Team and the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition and the National Park Service Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program look forward to working with our West Virginia and Pennsylvania partners to ensure the development of this world-class trail opportunity.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I can't wait to continue it. I'd like to invite Kent Spellman, who is the founder of the West Virginia Community Development Hub, to speak a little more.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be a part of this, although I am saddened that the state of our world right now prevents us from meeting face to face. This is an exciting day. I was a part of the feasibility study that was developed for the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh corridor. And as Eric said earlier, these feasibility studies are not just studies that go up on the shelf and sit there. These are studies that people can actually put to work in their communities, in their counties, and with their trail groups. So this is a great step forward to have this feasibility study roll out. Trails are much more than a place to walk, run, and bike. They are important drivers of community and economic development. Having access to trails is an amenity that is at the top of the list when families decide where they want to live. People want to live in communities with access to trails. Trails help develop healthier lifestyles. They develop environmental awareness, and they bring economic development. Trails build our economy through tourism for sure, but also they build our local economies by making our communities places where families and businesses want to locate. Our state, West Virginia, is widely known for its beauty, its diverse flora and fauna, and its wild and wonderful outdoors. Trails give our citizens and visitors from around the country and the world optimal access to our amazing outdoor assets. We in West Virginia know that the positive impact trails will bring to the northern panhandle of our state will be greatly enhanced by working with our partners in Ohio and Pennsylvania to achieve our collective vision for the Cleveland to Pittsburgh corridor and for the entire Industrial Heartland Coalition trail system, as well as the Great American Rail Trail. Collaboration is absolutely critical to success. We appreciate the strong state leadership in both Ohio and Pennsylvania that has been so instrumental in the impressive development of the trail systems in those states. Here in West Virginia, we look forward to establishing that same kind of support and leadership and advocacy here by mobilizing our communities and developing a legislative trails caucus to advocate in our legislature for moving trail issues forward. This is an opportunity for our beautiful state that we cannot allow to slip through our hands. I hope you in Ohio and Pennsylvania share that vision for what this could be. I believe our citizens, our communities, and our future demand that we make the Cleveland to Pittsburgh corridor a reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kent. Thank you for your partnership and all your work, not just in West Virginia, but throughout this industrial heartland region. I'd like to introduce Tom Demagall from Golden Triangle Bikes in Pittsburgh. And I'd like to highlight for everybody tuned in today, or anybody that's going to listen into this recording, when we talk about community development, when we talk about economic development, you're going to hear from Tom. Tom's lived it. Tom's seen it from before trail development, through trail development, and after trail development. So I'm excited to have Tom here. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Eric, and also Chris Corbin from PA Environmental Council for allowing me to be part of this. Like Eric said, I'm the owner of Golden Triangle Bike here in Pittsburgh. I was asked to speak a little today about the significance of trail connectivity and its impact on my business. First, let me tell you a little bit about my business. We're part bike shop, travel agency, Great Allegheny Passage, and City of Pittsburgh Welcome Center and outfitter. We're located on the Three Rivers Heritage Trails as well as the Great Allegheny Passage, roughly 1 mile from the western terminus at Point State Park. Two very distinct parts of our business. Internally, we call these parts of our business local and gap business. We even have two separate websites to represent these aspects, bikepittsburgh.com and bikethegreatalleghenypassage.com. Our local business consists of bike rentals and tours in and around the city of Pittsburgh. We're lucky to have an extensive trail system here called the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, as well as an expanding network of on-street bike lanes and routes. This part of our business also includes used bike sales, service, repairs, and some retail and refreshments. Our typical customer on this side of the business is a local or tourist spending a few hours or the day on our incredible trail system. The gap side of our business, gap referring to Great Allegheny Passage, we offer trip planning, bike rentals, shuttling, luggage transfer, bike building, itinerary creation for self-guided multi-day trips, on the Great Allegheny Passage between Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. Typical customer on this side of the business, we have worked with anywhere from a month to a year in advance, planning all aspects of their self-supported multi-day bike trip on the Great Allegheny Passage. 90% of these people are flying in from another part of the country or the world. This part of our business attributes to roughly 80% of our revenue. We send roughly 1,000 people a year down the trail. I started the business in 2007 with 20 bikes and a spot as a spot for local bike rentals. 14 years later, we have 250 bikes and 10 plus employees. The impact that trail completion and connectivity has had on my business is significant. In fact, I'd say that we wouldn't exist if it weren't for the work of Friends of the Riverfront, of which I'm a board member, and the Allegheny Trail Alliance. 3 years into the business, the Hot Metal Bridge was completed, making it possible for riders to safely access and connect the trails within the city that branch off of the artery on which our shop is located. This easily doubled our business. This was around the same time that we began getting requests for bikes and gear that would allow riders to take multi-day bike trips on the Great Allegheny Passage. 6 to 7 years ago, that last section of the gap was completed to downtown Pittsburgh. This completely changed the face of our business. We developed services that allowed us not only to equip people with bikes and gear that they needed for the trip, but also arrange lodging, transportation, meals, luggage transfers, and anything someone would need to allow them to make the trip. At this point, you can call us and have everything you need set up and arranged from the time you step off the airplane to the time you step back on an airplane to return home from the other end of the trail. Our business has grown from 20 bikes to 250, 1 employee to 10 plus. Our first season to offer equipped bike rentals for multi-day trips was roughly 20 riders. We now have 1,000 plus riders using our service every year. Not only has Golden Triangle Bike become what I call a travel agency disguised as a bike shop over the last 14 years, it has become a place that pays livable wages to 6 salaried year-round employees, as well as an additional 3 to 6 seasonal workers. We've become a staple a staple trail business within the city as well as along the Gap. It's a gathering point and information center for not only our customers, but for many trail users, bike enthusiasts, advocates, and friends. The completion of the trail has made it possible for not only Golden Triangle Bike to exist, but also for hundreds of businesses along the route who directly offer services to local and touring riders. In my opinion, trail connectivity and completion can make it possible for businesses like mine to exist anywhere. Thank you.
Tom, I can't thank you enough. That message is so important. It's one of the pillars of what we talk about when we work on corridors like Cleveland to Pittsburgh and the other corridors within the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition. I'm very happy and proud to introduce our next speaker, Commissioner Joe Sciarretti from Tuscarawas County, Ohio. And I think the story that Tom just told, and I think Tom would readily admit that, it's special, but it's also not so special that it's not replicable. This can be done. What it takes is the infrastructure to support it. And that's what we're talking about here. And there are some wonderful communities all throughout this corridor, many of which sit right in Tuscarawas County, Ohio, as well as the other counties that are ready to embrace this opportunity. There are citizens, entrepreneurs, existing and potential small business owners that will be able to do the kinds of things that Tom has been able to do as we develop this. So with that, Joe, thank you again for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Eric. And yeah, that is very, I mean, all of the stories, I think you'll hear very similar similarities in the community that we have here. Certainly all the economic spurring that happens, like in Tom's story, has the potential and is currently happening, I think, throughout the region. Listen, our DNA is no different than any others in terms of, the heritage and the history, the labors from, you're not seeing the other side of my office here, but there's a picture of probably 12 coal miners, one of them being my grandfather. And, we have the valleys, the foothills. I know Pittsburgh has some of the mountains, but everything that goes with that, the bridges that they had to go through, the aqueducts, and much of that has been exposed and has been ingrained in the minds of children and adults since really in large part the Ohio Erie Canal Coalition, which has been our local partner, OECC, has really did the yeoman's work of the vision and the leadership and the labor of those works from the beginning, where Tusk has really made a commitment. Our Board of Commissioners 20 some years ago set out and had the plan, which was called the 2020 plan, that has since been enhanced because we do not in Tuscarawas County have a levee that many of the communities do, but our county does not have a levee. So in large part, what OECC has done, and that was, thank you for pointing out, Eric, that a lot of these other regional interests have really did a great deal in helping to what you're seeing as the Industrial Heartland Trail. But what they did here primarily is really to spur the interest in the local groups, these local groups like the Panhandle Passage, like the Zor community, like ZTAP, which really hits to the heritage of some of the heritage I should mention real quickly. I know I only have 5 minutes, but we have so much action-packed history within Tuscarawas County. Listen, we have the only Revolutionary War fort in Ohio. We have and that was in the 1770s. We have the largest communal living. They lived off a barter system community in America. And actually, if it's passé to say pick up an encyclopedia anymore, but if you were to look at an encyclopedia in Europe or wherever, and you saw the largest communal living economic community, it would be Zor, Ohio. And it went from 1815 to in the 1880s. Our trail, that for the most part bisects most of our county, goes through and traipses through those communities. And so there's been large bike and walking fests that you might imagine have popped up because of that, because people are interested. But also the groups that are what we call side connectors and connectors to the trail. They've spurred off, and many of your communities have done this as well. Food trucks and things of that nature. We do not have a direct connection yet. Again, some of the things that we become, I guess a little bit behind the 8 ball with is the funding portion. So, we certainly applaud everything that the Industrial Heartland is doing. We want to highlight what has been done so far, and to make you reassured that, like the vision that they had back in the late 90s with the 2020 Commission, now is being called the 2025 Commission. And we are looking forward to really a strong future to connect the county. Local mayors, I should mention, Mayor Rick Homerkhausen in Dover, Mayor Joel Day have added boat ramps. They're been very energetic, and what's happening within the confines of their city. And again, food trucks, things of that magnitude are happening to support the trails. And it's really been, it's a buzzword anymore, but there has been collaborations happening here for the past 20 years, and they continue to take on new shapes.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I appreciate that, and I'm going to make a few closing comments here before we open this up for Q&A. I want to just wholeheartedly thank all of the panelists. Of course, stick with us for that Q&A. I'm going to bring up a couple more slides for everybody. As you heard, the support is in place for this. The support from political buy-in at the very top, all the way through our local and county public agencies, the amazing network of local nonprofits, community and county parks departments. Joe pointing out OECC, Dan Rice and his group there has done so much fabulous work, and same with Mira and Jim at Canal Way Partners. And I already promised earlier, I can't go through the list of local partners that have made this possible and continue to do the hard work on a daily basis. Every foot of trail is hard. It's hard. And this is 75% complete because people have cared for 30 years to do that hard work, and they continue to care. And again, this is really a testament to them, and eventually will be the legacy to leave to future generations. Things continue to happen. These gaps are being filled. There are catalytic projects ready to go right now. There are projects that are happening right now to fill in these gaps. We have really exciting projects. I'm going to name a couple. The Soil and Water Conservation District in Jefferson County is working on the Hellbender Reserve. I mean, this is an amazing habitat project that will include a section of trail for this corridor. The city of Steubenville has a riverfront redevelopment that has riverfront trail aspects to it that will help fill in some of those difficult gaps along the riverfront. There are projects happening. There's going to be more projects coming down the pike. What we really envision happening, and it's already is, and we hope that this study will help bolster, is in these projects, the hardest projects in the corridor, right? 75% is done. I'm not about to say it's the easy 75%, because those of you that were in the trenches building that would probably immediately say, well, there was nothing easy about it, because there wasn't. But the remaining bit of this corridor are going to be difficult, but there's going to be support, whether it's from Allegheny County in Pittsburgh to Cuyahoga County in Ohio, to the panhandle counties of Brooke and Hancock in West Virginia, to the state houses in all three of those states. Leadership at the state, local, and regional level understand the value this corridor is going to bring. We really truly do believe that the vision that this study lays out will help coalesce that kind of support from the anchor cities to the state houses and everywhere in between to help our partners fill these gaps in. We've got over 100 public and private agencies and organizations that have been a part of the coalition that is the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition. They're excited about the opportunity this corridor provides for them, their communities, and the entire region. We stand behind all the efforts of our local partners, and we're going to continue to help them and highlight their work and make sure that this remains a priority in all 3 state houses and frankly, throughout the greater region in the country. This is a world-class opportunity that will create a destination for people nationwide, and that is exciting. I want to give a special thank you to the fellow members of the project support team within the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, and the National Park Service Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. They have been, they work side by side with us here at Rails to Trails Conservancy on kind of the management of this project, and it's been an absolute treat working with them, with the hundreds and hundreds of people who have been a part of the IHTC over the last 5 years. And we look forward to continuing that relationship and continuing the support for all of our partners within IHTC. Here's my contact information. Anybody on this particular webinar or accessing the recording, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. We will, I'm always available via email, and I am sometimes available via telephone. I do want to give a very special thank you to some of our to some organizations that have made this work happen. As a nonprofit advocacy organization, we're privileged to do this work because we're supported by foundations and donors across the country. This particular study had a large amount of support from the George Gund Foundation based in Cleveland and the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation based in Pittsburgh and working in West Virginia. We've also had support from the Parks for All campaign from Hydro Flask, and we want to thank them. And with that, I am going to open this up for questions. Your questions in the chat box have been curated by staff during the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and move back to the overall map as something to look at while we answer some questions.
Hi, Eric and everyone. This is Kelly again, and I'm fielding some of your questions that are coming in here. Wanted to thank you all for participating via the question box and chat box during the webinar. Some great comments in here just about local trails that you love and enjoy, and excitement around being able to see this connection complete. One of the questions coming in from Richard Lott in Steubenville. He says he's a city and regional planner there with a background in recreational and green space planning, and he worked on the TJ Evans Trail. And he is willing to volunteer services to bring this expanding of network of rail trails to his community. Will we be providing a way that residents can contribute in this effort?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that, and then I'd love to ask my fellow project support team members, Kent or Andrea, if you guys have something to add. The Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition does have quarterly meetings that move around the region. Those are certainly open for people to be a part of. But I honestly think, and those, if you go to the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition Facebook page or the website, you can find information as those meetings are planned. But the IHTC is 51 counties over 4 states, and the work happens on the ground in your communities. So if you have citizens who are interested in trail development, if they're interested in helping make this vision a reality, by all means, we open, there's an open invitation to IHTC meetings. But I think the more impactful part will be engage with your local parks department, engage with your local advocacy group, engage with those local groups in your community, in your county, who are doing the work to build the trail itself, who are doing the work to program that trail, to have events on that trail. Become a part of the local activity on your local trail, because that's what's making this happen. That's what makes trails happen in every community across the country. So by all means, reach out to me if you're interested in being a part of the bigger vision and discussions around that. But the biggest impact is always local. So, and if you don't know who that is, reach out to us. We'll put you in touch with who those people are. You're needed, you're wanted, and your contribution is valuable. It's invaluable. And with that, I'll ask, Andrea or Kent, if you have something to fill in there.
I'll jump in. My background is in community development. This thing I love most, and Eric's absolutely right. When things happen that are good in a community, it's because of what local citizens are doing. So I can speak in some detail about the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh corridor and what has made the work advance there. And it's always been those local trail groups. We have 5 advocacy groups that cover basically the entire P2P corridor in West Virginia. And they're our go-to people. They have the capacity to bring in county commissioners, to bring in city officials, to bring in the parks people into the conversation about how to move the work forward. In Harrison County, we also have the Harrison County Task Team on Rail Trails, which was a request of the county commission in Harrison County, because they recognize that as a county commissioner, it's tough for them to do the work. They need fellow citizens to jump in and help do this work at the local level. So, yep, best way to get involved is to organize a bunch of your friends into a local trail advocacy group and start recruiting more people and members to that group, and then identify some projects and tasks, which this feasibility study will help you do, to go after.
Great.
And I would add in that there have been many efforts in Jefferson County and Steubenville to make progress on trails. There was a trails vision that was created several years ago, and there are groups and organizations that are working towards developing the trail system. It's not always easy. There's some difficult points there, but tie into what's happening in your local community and support their efforts to move this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. We have a question here related to the timeline of the build out of this section, and it comes from Bob Batts of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, just wanting to know, does the report lay out a time frame for this connection to happen?
The report does not specifically lay out a time frame. It does have, there are time frames on certain projects that have a timeline attached to them. There are certain projects, and if you get into the report, you're going to see each gap. Well, every part of this corridor is covered within the document, whether it's an open trail or whether it's a gap. There are sections for every single foot of trail in this corridor. For those gaps where there is a viable project right now that has funding and has a timeline, that is documented. So there are some timelines in this report. Where there's not, there are recommendations for next steps, and those recommendations are going to be based on, a whole lot of variables. The ability of the local community, the availability of local public infrastructure around park districts or public agency ability to develop. But there are recommendations for every single piece of the trail. There are not specific timelines unless there's already a project in place. But I am going to ask our lead author on this, who really, she knows the details of this report like no other, if you want to chime in a little bit on that, Leah.
Yeah, so like Eric mentioned, there are some timelines. I would say there's timelines attached to at least a quarter of the projects. It's actually been interesting. I've been updating the text as we've been, writing. So there was actually one portion that started off as a gap that is no longer a gap, but an open section of trail. So these are really coming online constantly. And while some of these, don't have timelines, I would not be surprised if timelines, developed in the near future for some of these.
Right.
Thank you all. We have a few great questions for Tom coming in from Chris Corbin, our friend here, but he does have some great questions about kind of your experience as a local business owner and understanding kind of visitorship and usership of the trails in your area. Just wanted to get a sense of kind of like the geography of folks who you see come into your shop who use the gap. Where are they coming from? And what is most attractive about the gap that you think draws folks in from, further distances?
Sure. I think that the Great Allegheny Passage is very high on people's radar when they are searching for a, when they're searching for a bike trip. The thing that's so attractive about it is that it's very easily done, self-supported, since you're riding through a town every 10, 15, 20 miles. The fact that there are businesses there that are specifically set up to support those kind of riders, and I think it's unique, and it's if not the longest, one of the longest end-to-end trails in the off-road trails in the country. It connects two major cities. The people that we see, I would guess that I put this number at like probably 30% of the people that ride with us every year from California. There's a lot of people from Colorado, a lot of people from Washington State, Arizona. Every year we get a handful of people that are from Australia. We get people from Europe. But the vast majority of the people that are doing this trip are flying in from somewhere, so they need our services are sort of set up for people that need that need those kind of services to make this trip. But they're mostly West Coast people, and like I said, a lot of Colorado people that live in places where there's a population of people that are active. And I should mention that the majority of our customers are retired and semi-retired people. So that's also a big factor. Did I answer all those questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. A quick question from Scott Root, just curious about the different segments 4A and 4B that you see on the map. And he's wondering if those sections are considered a choice, or are they both intended to be built?
That's a great question. Thank you. And I'm glad that the map is already bringing up those kinds of precise questions. The idea for any feasibility study on a corridor is to find the best way from point A to point B, not to find every way from point A to point B. In this particular area, really the end of the Conotton Creek Trail at Bowerston, Ohio, to the current terminus, or to the Ohio and Erie Canal towpath trail, there are a couple options. And again, this was all driven by local partners on the ground, the Tuscarawas County Park District, Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition, the people that are doing the work on the ground that we talked to and worked with over the course of a year plus on this. And it was apparent that both of these options needed to be put on the map. Eventually, it's going to likely be an either or, but there was no strong indication that we shouldn't show both of them. And I shouldn't even say either or. Eventually, someday, hopefully they're both there, because there are small communities along both of those corridors. And those communities deserve to have a trail too. So the intention for this particular study is to find a corridor, a single. But I also don't want to say that the communities within Tuscarawas, Carroll, and Harrison County, maybe both of those do get developed, and that would be wonderful for everybody.
Thank you. So we have a question in here that's related to congressional support, and so support from federal congressional leaders in these states. And we know that these trail systems need support from elected officials at every level of government. But this specific question was about federal congressional support. So if anyone could talk about that, whether it's this corridor or individual trails, that would be helpful.
I've been speaking plenty, and I have some things I could say about that, but I'm actually, I don't know. Joe, do you want to talk about how your congressional delegation and how the county commissioners have talked with them about the importance of trails, and what their, how has that interaction been in Tuscarawas County with your federal delegation?
It's been very strong. I would say, one of our milestones, and I had talked about the aqueduct bridge, and there's just so many different milestones to talk about. But one of those milestones was the bridge over 77, and that was a multi-million-dollar And I think most callers are most folks on the call are familiar with I-77. And anytime you have to put a bridge up there because there's ongoing traffic, it's even more, ominous than going over a river or anything you might imagine. But going back to some congressional candidates from elected officials, pardon me, the past 20 years, it's been in the same, I think, vein that everything that we've said already. It certainly spurs economic development, celebrates the area's heritage. And our current Congressman Gibbs, as well as Congressman Johnson, because we have two, as it is now. It's probably going to change with the census, but right now we have two congressmen. They see the value in it. Again, OECC is really our, to use the word, surrogate on a lot of these things. Even though we're in contact with them, trails are probably a 16th of the things that we do, and that's coupled with our Parks Department. But they are on top of it. They know that we want funds when those funds are available, and I would say the same thing is true with the state legislature. And that being the Senate and the House, when those capital bills are up, they're aware that that's certainly a want and a desire, and we don't have to look very far where it was really done well. And our legislature, as I believe, I'm going to take a little bit of a stretch here and say that West Virginia as well as Pennsylvania is population based, and so those areas that have those larger populations, not unlike our federal Congress House, you're going to be able to pull more weight in those larger cities, and so we have very skillful, well-tenured legislators, and that represent multiple counties, and so we have to do our homework, on the local side, and we have to really vie for those dollars to come back. Hopefully that answers the question, but I think mainly you were asking about the congressional representation, and definitely with our partners, like I had mentioned, the regional folks with ZTAP and the ZOR, as well as Panhandle Passage. Don't want to start naming them because I'll not name a couple. Buckhorn Creek, all those local interests, as well as our office, are well aware in communication with their federal representatives.
Thank you, Joe. The one thing I'll add to that is, the main spine on this corridor in the state of Ohio, and you've heard it mentioned a couple times, is the Ohio and Erie Canal Towpath Trail, and that really, was a vision of Congressman Ralph Regulus. So when you talk about federal representation around this corridor, and early on, I know I said this is this vision is only possible because of visionaries 30 years ago, and it's a legacy that we can even think about connecting Cleveland to Pittsburgh. Maybe at the top of that list would have to be Congressman Ralph Regulus. And when you come into
happened. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say it would not have happened without Congressman Regulus. He himself was from the VAR, which is close to Tuscarawas County. He had the vision of, because it was embedded in him growing up around the canalways. I remember meeting Dan Rice. We brought up Dan. I remember meeting him and just being, lit up by his passion in ZOR, and Congressman Regulus was there. That was probably 22, 23 years ago when I was an aide, and just being, blown away by the vision and the way he was able to get dollars to come home, which was his legacy for many things. And now his son serves as a county commissioner, certainly in Stark County, Canton, Ohio, and has his own passions and great leadership. So yeah, thank you for filling in the void there. But I think I did mention that it was 25 years in the making, that the bridge that went over 77 would not have happened because of him, but largely the canal and outlining exactly where the canal beds were also something that he left a legacy on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple more in
Great.
Before we wrap up, and just wanted to draw the panelists' attention, and especially for Eric and Leah and others who are working together with partners on the ground. some great ideas for future partnerships here. So Mike Kramer from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, says that he's the organizer of a meetup group in Western Pennsylvania. And he has about 150 members in his meetup group. And he knows that there are similar meetup groups in Pittsburgh as well, with potentially thousands of members. So he's suggesting, maybe there's a way to bring organizers of various meetup bicycling groups together to discuss how they could help move this project along. So a great suggestion there from Mike. And kind of similarly, Laura McShane, wanted us to know that Airbnb experience could also be mentioned as a partner in promoting the trail. So already kind of jumping to the opportunities to promote this trail system in many different types of tourism platforms and opportunities there. So just wanted to make those two comments. And if anybody else on the panel wanted to kind of follow up with ideas that have been sparked, I will leave that for you. We do have a couple of specific questions about the route from folks who are in attendance. And I'll just remind everyone that when you are able to download the report and take a good look at it, you can find those very specific detailed routing descriptions in the segment analysis section of the report. So take a look there. And if you still have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to Eric and Leah. Before we wrap up, I'm just kind of checking out because we do have a few more coming in here. Oh, so here's a nice segue, and then perhaps Eric, you can close us out.
Sure.
Can RTC touch on the work that is now beginning on the Ashtabula to Pittsburgh corridor? Because there are some overlaps between that corridor and Cleveland to Pittsburgh. Thank you, Chris, for that question.
Yeah, absolutely. As you heard earlier from Kent, the first study that RTC did, the first corridor feasibility study within the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, was done on the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh corridor. And that was released a bit over a year ago, and you can find that at railstotrails.org as well. You are now seeing for the first time the unveiling of Cleveland to Pittsburgh. And I can tell you little over a month ago, our trail planning crew, Leah and myself and Kevin Belanger, were out in Northeast Ohio kickstarting the Ashtabula to Pittsburgh corridor study. So in about 14 to 16 months, hopefully we can all be in person for the big release of that study. But we will be working on that corridor. We are working on that corridor, and we'll be intensely looking at it over the next 14 plus months here. I guess you're seeing my screen. You may see my cursor here. You can see a small you can see a shaded outline of the current alignment of that corridor. Now, whether that remains the alignment or not, we shall see. But very exciting. There's many similarities between that one and Cleveland to Pittsburgh in that there's a lot of wonderful trail on the ground. And so there's going to be some of those same themes. This really is the evolution of what they've been working on for the same amount of time, 30 years in that corridor. So we're very excited about that. We do think, and we look forward to all of our partners, not just in Ashtabula to Pittsburgh, but all of our partners in Cleveland to Pittsburgh, all of the partners in all of the IHTC corridors, to continue coming to the project support team, Rails to Trails Conservancy, National Park Service RTCA, Pennsylvania Environmental Council, your local trail group. Continue engaging with IHTC. Tell us what you need. What are some of the resources you need? What are outside resources, whether they're things that any of us collectively can bring to the table or whether we need to look for them elsewhere. That's the power of this coalition. Use the power of this coalition. Use Rails to Trails, use Pennsylvania Environmental Council, use the Park Service. Ask us for what you need. The answer may not be, yes, we've got it tomorrow, but let us help you. Let the power of this vision and the power of this coalition help you with your local needs. That's the beauty in this, is we're all in this together, and we have universal buy-in to the importance of this. So I appreciate that, and really can't say enough that what is exciting about this corridor and the IHTC in general is that people are universally behind it, and people are really excited about the potential it brings. So when we are approached by organizations, public agencies, and just engaged citizens and say, look, what is it, I have an idea for how we might move something in my community, or I have an idea for a great engagement strategy to get people behind this idea, come to us. The best ideas never come from the top down, and top down sounds strange when we're talking about a bunch of nonprofits here, but the ideas always come from the coalition itself. So engage, and you're all a part of it, whether you've been to a formal meeting or not. If you live in or have an interest in this part of the country, and you have an interest in trail development or community development, you are the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition. You are. So don't feel like this is a organization or a club or a coalition that has some sort of formal membership. You're a part. Come engage. Let us know what you need.
Thank you so much. So we are at 2:30, and we just want to thank again all of our panelists today during the webinar and everyone who contributed to this report. We look forward to working with all of you and everyone on the phone in the near future. And just a final reminder that everyone can find the full report and download it on RTC's website at www.railstotrails.org/C2P. A recording of this webinar will be available on that webpage by tomorrow, so you can forward to your friends and get more folks involved. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You.